In this episode, I want to talk a little bit about light, sunlight, shadows, and all of that, and that everything needs to go together. This is a time lapse that I've put together, and it's only 11 seconds long. And please have your eyes on the shadow on the left side on the sign. It moves, and it's normally not that visible. But in the moment you shoot maybe for your project, and you do that maybe from the morning to the late afternoon, you find maybe something happens in all the pictures. The light has changed dramatically. And that's not a simple problem. It's a big problem. And I want to show you one more of these time-lapse. This is another time-lapse in Sedona, and you can see here how color and the light changes here dramatically. It's not a long period of time that I have here captured, but it's significant how different these parts of the landscape are in this short time of capturing all of that. And you might be surprised if someone tells you, yeah, put the camera on daylight, 5600 degree Kelvin, and the next one says, no, it's 5500, and someone else will have even a better number. And then you are completely screwed because you have no idea where to start and where to end. My best advice is, of course, always to shoot in RAW, skip JPEG all, and then have a look what you get. The best idea is, of course, if you are not shooting for mood, have a gray card with you and then measure it later. If you have not a colorimeter, which most people don't have because they're expensive and so on. However, what I want to do with you today here is, of course, to go into Cinema 4D. And here in Cinema 4D, I have put something together, and I believe you see already the disaster. We have in the background a nice scene, pretty perfect for many options, but of course it doesn't really work well together. We could argue already if the scale works. That's the first thing. The second would be, is the perspective working at all? That's not our main focus here. Of course, we have to check this out if these two first ideas work together. I have talked about this in the integration series, so I don't want to repeat myself here. But very important is, of course, that you see where things go wrong. When I take this shadow here on a tree, I guess this is the shadow from this branch here. And when I take a look here to this shadow, I guess that goes in a completely different direction. And that is, of course, something where everything should ring the alarm bell. That's not working. You should do something else. Of course, you could just swip it over, and now the shadow goes in nearly a right direction, but then we would have sun here. So we could even go and rotate the whole thing. And then we get maybe something that works for us, more or less. And then we have a light temperature here. And I render this so you can see really what it's all about. Besides that, this is really a quality where I would say this is nothing for the background. This is fantastic maybe for reflection and for GI. But for the background, that is maybe only just a webcast, whatever, nothing for HD. And this shadow here has a different color already. This is a little bit warmer. This is darker. The black point here is not that saturated as it is here. And so we have many, many little things to observe. Take your time when you put things together. Compare. Is shadow all right? Is the color of the shadow and the darkness okay? Is the final light mood okay? Because this guy looks blown out. That can have many reasons. The photographer was not really a well-prepared pro, or it is just overcast. When it is overcast, then we have maybe not that sharp of a shadow here. And of course, if it is overcast, then this light on the tree might be the right one. But then again, where comes that shadow from that we saw on that twig here? Because here we have some sun. That can all be because I see here a little bit bluish. So we have maybe in the back some sun, and we can see this here on the specular highlights, and we have an overcast in one direction. Everything is possible. Have your eyes open. I do not criticize this image here. It's, by the way, from the content browser. So I think the point is clear. This will not work. And even when you see here the leaves, they are maybe 3 feet or 1 meter long, maybe even bigger. Of course, now someone could argue that's a fantasy scene and this is a huge jungle. And okay, I go with that. But then we have maybe some other problems in the whole thing. Anyway, whatever you like to produce is of course up to you, and if there is a reason, do that. The next part will be a little bit more ridiculous even, and I warn you, don't take that example too literally, because it looks completely off. Not alone that the perspective might be not okay, but the color here is a complete different one than the foreground. Now, what I have said before, I think your mindset is already, yeah, that doesn't work, I see that. Okay, but consider there is maybe a big light source in the foreground that illuminates now this building at night. Then it works okay? I don't know, maybe it does. But there's another thing that I want to discuss, and I warn you, it sounds ridiculous, but the background image was shot and processed with the same settings in the light temperature as the foreground object. And there is no connection normally. Whatever you do, it should fit to the whole scene from the start. And you have no option to fit anything with some tricks in it. And to set a camera to daylight, maybe even in the night, gives you a nice result, maybe very warm and everything else. But the truth is, it doesn't work with the foreground element. And now I hear you saying, yeah, you said you shoot everything with RAW. Okay, RAW is that daylight settings will be not affecting anything on the RAW. But what I do when I see on my screen this image and this image is affected by this. And my readings when I have my time, my aperture, and of course my histogram, that's all affected by that, because it doesn't show normally raw information. It does when you want on a RED camera, not on a DSLR in the most cases. Anyway, all of that is a little bit very far off extreme what I'm telling you here, because what you use in the night and during the day is of course a completely different mindset. And that should show you already that we have to deal here with something that doesn't work together. Again, if your movie works in that way, and if you have reasons to do so, that this is maybe lit by a spaceship and this is just in burning mode because the whole city is put into ashes based on the spaceship, then this might work, of course. Let's have another case, and then I close here already. I have here a panorama that will not work in terms of scale, and I guess also the light will have some problems to convince you. So we have established already that this area here casts shadow on the door. So we have an idea where the light goes, where the light was in the scene. And we should match anything else to this image if that is the main set here. Then we can see here is a specular. I assume that we have to deal here with one sun or with one main light, and this light goes then from the left side. So once again, we can rotate the whole thing until we get maybe something where we say, yeah, that could be. Here I can't really see where it comes from. The specular highlight gives it a little bit away, so we turn it back here until we get where we want. I could believe this setting here until I find reasons to not do so. This area here is dark. This is a little bit brighter here, so it could work. It's all up to you. Again, and to close this short little chapter, the scale should be right. The light temperature should be right. The intensity of the light should be right. The whole color set should match everything. And if you use a panorama in the background for the reflection, you have already a connection to the whole building. But anything in a scene will change. And again, daylight is not daylight. In the morning, the color temperature is different than on high noon, and in the evening, just think on sunsets, it's completely different again. I hope I could make with some of these extreme points that I have shown you here, and with some extreme positions of color temperature in the camera, I could make a point here and leave maybe an impression that you have to consider that. So when you run out and you want to shoot for a large scene, everything in one morning, you might run maybe into the trouble that on one building the shadow is different than in the next and in the next, and that's maybe a bad giveaway for the whole scene. One remedy, and then I close here, could be you rotate the buildings a little bit to get the shadows in sync again, if that is an issue. It's all up to you. You are the artist, you are responsible for your projects. Make the best out of it. See you on the next one.